Support for Overheard with Evan Smith comes from Hilco Partners, a Texas government affairs consultancy, Claire and Carl Stewart, Christine and Philip Dial, and the Eller Group, specializing in crisis management, litigation, and public affairs communication. EllerGroup.com.
I'm Evan Smith. He's a filmmaker and novelist who these days is a TV powerhouse, the creator and executive producer of FX's Fargo, which has earned 70 Emmy nominations over 5 seasons. He's Noah Hawley. This is Overheard. A platform and a voice is a powerful thing. You've really turned the conversation around about what leadership should be about. Are we blowing this? Are we doing the thing we shouldn't be doing by giving in to the attention junkie? As an industry, we have an obligation to hold ourselves to the same standards that we hold everybody else to. This is Overheard. Noah, welcome. Good to have you here.
Thank you.
And nice to see you. And congratulations. Man, I've told you this a million times, but I love the 5th season of Fargo more than almost anything.
I love it too. Thank you.
It is so great. And you know, the whole show from start to finish, first season to this season, has been great. But there was something about this season that felt different to me. Did it feel that way to you?
Well, what's funny for me is that every time I'm in the middle of making one, I think, well, it's always been Jon Hamm and Juno Temple. That's what Fargo is, and so I could say that about each one. But I do feel like this season was concentrated Fargo.
Yeah.
In that, I feel like it was riffing on the movie, and so there was a lot of the setup that was familiar to the audience, that we were doing our own thing, and then I just really tried to make it the most muscular, lean version of a Fargo story I could.
Yeah, well, for the benefit of people, we know obviously the show, but for the benefit of people who don't know it, this is a show that is, first of all, based on the film, the Coen brothers' famous film, Fargo.
Yes.
But it is not a television version of the story in the movie.
Correct.
There's no Steve Buscemi, there's no wood chipper, right?
Yes.
What is the theory of the case here for the average person who may not know?
Well, the challenge, because the show, the origin of the show was that MGM, who controlled the rights to the movie, called FX, the network, and said, would you like to do a show based on Fargo? And FX said yes.
Does that happen very often, by the way? So many movies are made. How many movies become the subject of a conversation like that?
Well, it's something that movie studios have as a library, right? Yeah. And so they own a thing that they call intellectual property or IP, and so they're always trying to make more money off of their existing IP because audiences will remember a movie Fargo versus something completely new.
Right.
So
extremely memorable characters in the movie.
Yes.
A memorable storyline, and of course the place,
right,
which becomes really important to the making of the TV show.
Yeah, it's what Joel and Ethan Coen calls Siberia with family restaurants.
Right.
And so FX, I'd worked with them before, and they called me and said, we're thinking of doing Fargo as a show, but we're wondering, can you do it without Marge?
Yeah.
Who's the Frances McDormand
character, right.
Because of course you're never gonna out Frances McDormand, and
right.
So I thought, well, that's a strange thing to ask, because you're asking me to remake the movie into a show without any of the characters, i.e. none of the story, which basically is, can you paint me a picture of this city with all new buildings, right? But it has to feel like Fargo by doing something totally new.
Yeah.
And that to me was really interesting. And what I said to them was, why is the movie called Fargo? It takes place in Minnesota, right? Except that
them in this case is
FX.
Is FX, right?
Yeah, except that the word Fargo is evocative of a place, right? This wilderness, nowhere, friendly, Minnesota nice place, right?
But also with something evil just below the surface.
Right.
Feels
and so after the movie Fargo, Fargo also means a kind of story, a true crime story that isn't true, where truth is stranger than fiction, right? And so if you think of that, then Fargo becomes a kind of state of mind.
Right.
And then you go, all right, well, here's a story. Does that feel like Fargo? It can be a one-to-one correlation, season 1, where the car salesman's an insurance salesman, but can it also be a 1979 crime epic about the
Yeah.
death of the family business and the rise of corporate
The
America.
critical piece, which you've alluded to, is that the story season to season is a different story, and the characters season to season are different characters. And that's obviously unusual in television, not unprecedented, but you've made essentially a serial with different stories
Yes.
that are loosely thematically related, but they're very, very different.
Yes.
Right? I mean, I found them, watching them, to be very different. The fifth is very different from the first, but it's all of a piece.
Yeah, it's a know it when I see it.
Was that your idea or their idea?
That was my idea. I said, look, I don't think it can be a television show because what makes the movie so powerful is that at the end of it, she's seen the worst case she'll ever see.
Yep.
She's got 2 more months till she has this baby. He got the 3-cent stamp. And tomorrow she wakes up and it's a normal day.
Right.
But if she wakes up tomorrow and it's another crazy Coen Brothers case, you can't say it's a true story anymore. Right? And so, but we could do it where every year is a different true story.
Yep.
Right? And that turned out to be, you know, a really exciting, challenging, terrifying recipe for you know, trying to make something completely different that feels the same.
Well, it's different for you every time. It's different for us every time. And it occurs to me, not a TV guy, but if I were in the business of casting for a show like this, having it be different characters from season to season means I might be able to get some people to commit to do a season as opposed to committing to do a whole series.
Yes.
Right? So you can get really great people as you have every season.
Yeah, the limited series is great for that in terms of casting, and you know, I'm so lucky at the actors that I've worked with every year. But no, I don't think that Ewan McGregor would have signed on for 5 seasons of television, or Chris Rock, or Billy Bob Thornton. You know, it's you're asking for a finite amount of their time.
Yep.
And you know, as an actor, if you think about what playing 10 hours of a character is versus 2 hours, I end up working with a lot of actors who tell me afterwards that they've been spoiled now, and it's hard for them to say yes to scripts because they don't have that depth of
just go back
experience.
to doing a regular old 2 hours, right? They don't enjoy that. How are the Coens involved? The Coens are called out, of course, properly in the credits for having birthed this thing originally. But what has their involvement been at any level, at any point?
I mean, it's mostly name only. You know, they were involved when the show was set up before I came along, and they said, if we like a script, you can put our name on it. If not, you know where to send the check. And then they read the script. They said very nice things to me about the script.
Yep.
But they said, look, it's not our medium. You seem to know what you're doing.
But they've said grace over it implicitly, if not explicitly.
They have. I mean, we showed them the first season, the first episode of the first season. I'm not sure they've ever watched another episode because we knew that we would be asked when we launched the show.
Right.
And Ethan Coen said, yeah, good, which to him is a high praise. So,
right. Man, a few words. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
And so, you know, every once in a while, I'll see them in New York, or I'll call Joel and say, I hear you need a new pool, so I'm going to do another season of Fargo.
Gots to get paid.
Yeah. But it must be strange for them. Imagine in New York City, every few years, you walk out of your apartment and there are bus ads for Fargo and subway ads for Fargo, a movie you made in 1984.
You say, what year is it exactly?
Right, 1985.
Yeah.
And, you know, this thing just keeps going.
Amazing. Your role has changed how over the 5 seasons?
Well, the only thing that I've added in is directing. I did some second unit directing in the first year, but really, you know, when you're the showrunner of a show, it's like 6 jobs.
Yep.
You know, I'm the lead writer. First year I wrote all the episodes. You know, I hire the directors, I prep the directors, I make all the artistic choices. This actor should be wearing this room should look like that, etc.
You're involved with casting, surely.
Yes,
right.
I do all the casting, and then I also have to do the managerial work. There's budgeting, there's location work, there's managing up to the corporation that pays for it, etc., etc. And so in the second season, I then thought, well, the problem still is that there's a layer between me and the material, right? Which is, I have a vision for it. in my head, and I can explain that to other people and have them direct, but you never get 100% of what you're looking for. And so starting in season 2, I said, look, every year is a new movie. I need to set the tone of it. What's it going to look like? What's our cinematic approach?
Right.
Tone of voice, et cetera. And so that's what I've added into it since then.
That word showrunner has moved into the kind of popular vernacular
Yes.
in a way that I think a lot of people go, oh, he's the showrunner, but they don't know what that actually means.
It's like mail carrier.
Showrunner runs the show, right? It's like
runs
the
the
most
show,
obvious thing in the
exactly.
world, right?
Yes.
You run the show.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is onomatopoetic or whatever. Yeah, that's what I do. I'm responsible. I become the CEO of a
Right.
$70 million corporation that is
Right.
Fargo. And, you know, but I'm like the pirate on the ship, right? Because my philosophy is always, this could go horribly. I love that feeling on the first day coming on set, because I know I'm taking a risk, right? Well,
Yep.
no one's ever done this before, and as much as supportive as the network is, I get the same note every year. They're like, it just doesn't feel like last year, you know? And like, I know, it's never...
Do they mean that in a positive or negative way?
Well, you know, I don't think anyone else does this for them. And so
Right.
3 years will go by and they'll forget the working with me experience, and they'll work with a lot of other people, and then I'll come back and
Oh, no, the
do my
pirate's back.
thing. Yeah,
Right,
the
yeah.
pirate is back. And you know what's fascinating to me about it is that you're gonna feel all the same feelings, just in different places for different reasons,
Yeah,
right? You're
yeah.
gonna feel that 3-cent stamp moment. You're gonna feel that wood chipper moment. You know what I mean? You're gonna feel the, think I'm gonna barf. You know, you're gonna feel those moments from
Right.
the movie, and the terror of the violence and the absurdity of some of the humor, and then the genuineness of the
Mm-hmm.
decency of the characters.
Can I talk to you a little bit about season 5 just for a second?
Yeah.
Because I feel like in season 5, you really hit a sweet spot on casting. I thought that the casting in the first 4 seasons was great. But in particular,
Yeah.
Jon Hamm and Juno Temple. Juno Temple, most of us only know from Ted Lasso, right? Reasonably.
Correct.
Reasonable to say that. And she seemed like an extraordinary person who you made ordinary in this season of Fargo. Whereas Jon Hamm, who we've seen a million times, felt ordinary to us, and at least to me, felt extraordinary in the way that you put him in this series.
Yeah.
When he got out of the water with his pierced nipple and his bare butt,
Yeah.
I thought to myself, this is Jon Hamm taking a risk, but it's also Noah taking a risk. You presented a different view of both of those actors
Yes.
than I'd seen before.
Well, and then I put him in a towel that had his own face on it.
Well, cherry on the sundae, right?
Yeah.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah, you know, I mean, Juno, what's fascinating about Juno is that her father is Julian Temple, who is, you know, in the 80s was a documentary filmmaker and music producer. And so she grew up in this crazy...
Family business, right?
Yeah, she grew up in this sort of crazy rock and roll London world. And yes, as you said, I turned her into housewife and mother, you know, and she sold it so convincingly.
So
You
convincing.
know, and
I couldn't actually halfway through the season remember that wasn't her accent,
yes.
right? Like she pulled it off so convincing.
Well, she stayed in it all week, and then if you called her on a Sunday, this British person would answer the phone,
Right.
and it would be confusing.
On the 7th day, the accent rests. Right? That's it,
Exactly, exactly.
And then Hamm, who has really, I think, demonstrated his range in a lot of ways over his career, but never something like this. As evil as he could have possibly
No,
been.
I told him going into it, because I'd made a movie with him before, so I know him pretty well, and I said, look, this is a character part.
Yeah.
It's not a leading man part, right? It's not handsome on a horse. You have to really go to the dark places that this guy is at, and you know, John is not a process actor. You know, he'll say, I think I got something for the voice, and I'll say, great. You know, he doesn't want to have long intellectual conversations about the underlying themes, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
And I respond to what how the actors want to engage with the material. And
Right.
so, you know, you show up and you see what he does, and then if I have a thought, I'll tell him, and he'll make an adjustment.
He's
But,
responsive,
I mean, 7 seasons of Mad Men, you know.
right?
Yeah, he knows the drill.
So those two I thought were extraordinary. But again, going back to the conversation that we had offline from the show during the season, Jennifer Jason Leigh for me was the revelation, right? I've been watching Jennifer Jason Leigh in movies for so many years, and yet her character was the breakout for me
Yeah.
of all. And her her lockjaw rich lady voice
Yes.
was one of the best things that I could remember seeing on television. Every time she would talk, I was just dying.
Yeah.
Like I thought that she just killed it. And again, didn't necessarily think of her in that way before.
Right.
Right. But she's fantastic.
Well, she asked me if there were any role models or comps that she should look at, and I had her look at William F. Buckley, you know, in the 60s.
You
right?
literally did.
I did.
So we haven't talked about that before.
No,
You literally
no.
did.
I did. I said, go watch some William F. Buckley. What I didn't mean was come back sounding like William F. Buckley.
Right. But you know, kind of. I mean.
And she did, and you know, which I didn't realize until I rolled the camera the first time, and I thought, oh, okay, well that's a little much, but let's dial her
Right.
back.
But you know, it
'cause
sort of works though.
I like where she's living with it.
It works.
Yeah.
All right. So anyway, great, love. You know, all the feels about the season 5, wonderful. Will there be a season 6?
Yeah, there should be a season 6, I think. I don't think it's going to come soon, but they never come soon. There's a lot that goes into a season of Fargo, from, you know, just making sure you're not repeating yourself. But, you know, it's for me, it's really an exploration of this great American experiment of ours. And you know, and a lot of it is that line, and here you are, and it's a beautiful day, and for what, a little bit of money, right? There's always this capitalism, the things that people do for money. So there's always an angle on that. And then, you know, 10 hours of storytelling there's a lot. You got to have a lot of ideas and characters and stuff going into it. So
Takes a while to figure out what it's going to be.
yeah.
So the next thing you have on the slate is Alien Earth.
Which, who gets to do Fargo and Alien?
And Alien.
Yeah.
So this will be the second time that you're essentially interpreting or reinterpreting a film project for television.
Yes.
And it also will not be the retelling of the story again in the film Alien or any of its sequels.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I like to say if I have a skill, it's in understanding what the original film made me feel and why.
Yeah. Right.
And then recreating those feelings for you in different ways through a different story. And so, you know, with Alien, there are a number of elements to it, obviously, that are iconic, which is this: you have this terrifying monster with this crazy life cycle that just gets worse and worse, right? And you have these space truckers, right? There's definitely a blue collar element to the show, to the movie, and the second movie as well. They become grunts and. But then for me, what's really interesting is the moment in which Ian Holm reveals himself to be an android. And you think, oh, so it's not just a monster movie, it's humanity trapped between our primordial parasitic past and the AI future, and they're both trying to kill us, right? And so now it feels like there's something to talk about.
Yikes.
Yeah. Oh, did I say AI future?
Well, I mean, I was kind of, I like where you were going, and then you scared the hell out of me, actually. Yeah. So this was also your idea or somebody else's idea?
Well, FX has come to me. You know, I have this relationship with them. I mean, I did a show called Legion.
Legion, right.
Because they came to me and said, is there anything in the X-Men world that would be interesting to you? And they were very non-specific, and so I came up with an idea that seemed interesting to me. And you know, and here they said Alien to me, and what would you do with it? And you know, I'm guilty of if you give me a thought, I'll have an idea. So I did. And you know, it's just about making it. You know, those movies are survival stories, right? They're 2-hour survival stories. You can't do a survival story over 50 hours, right? You have to do something else. And my instinct is always, well, take the creature out of it. What's the show, right? Take the superhero powers out of Legion. What's the show? It's a guy who either has a mental illness or he doesn't. And that's the story, right? And so here it's like, what is the show without the creature? And then now put the creature back. How does the creature feed into the themes of the show and the characters? And so that was my approach.
So this season is shot. It's delivered.
Yes.
We're a year out probably from seeing it as we sit here.
Yeah, sometime next summer probably. I haven't edited all of them yet. It's a long process.
But you're excited about it.
Yeah.
So in the time we have remaining, I want to talk about you. I mean, I think the art is great, but I'm always interested in the artist. And in your case, you took an unlikely path, I think, to get here.
Yeah.
Right? Grew up in New York, went to college in upstate New York. did not initially come out of college thinking, I want to do this.
No.
No.
No, and
You were going to be a rock star.
I was, but I'm not a night person. So that was...
Yeah, that would tend to be a problem for you, actually.
I was like, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I will rock this place. But 11 o'clock at night, so...
Happy hour bar band, right?
Yes,
That's it. Yeah.
exactly. And so, you know, I was working day jobs. I worked at the Legal Aid Society in New York City in the family court, so working with abuse and neglect cases and juvenile delinquency cases.
And your mother had been a writer, and particularly of books, and a book specifically on that subject. Like that specifically was something that you had some knowledge.
My mother wrote the first Speak Ed on incest in 1979.
Right, extraordinary.
She wrote books about family violence and kids in private psych hospitals, and so, you know, I went and did that work, and it's, you know, it's a stressful job.
Yeah, right.
I was supporting, you know, 40 lawyers, each with a caseload of 100, and no time to prep. And so I turned to fiction writing as an outlet, a way to process.
Yeah. So it started really as a novelist.
Yeah.
Before anything else.
Yeah, I started as a novelist, and in '97 I published
Conspiracy of Tall Men was the first of 6 novels you've written. That was 26 years ago.
I know.
Right?
Whew.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, you know, my motto is, what else can I get away with, right? And so I was living in San Francisco as part of I had a writers collective, 21 writers and filmmakers. We had our own offices in a converted dog and cat hospital. And I had a friend who was doing some screenwriting, and I would break story with him. And then I thought, well, let me try it. And so I wrote a script that got me an agent, that got me meetings, and they said, well, you should say what you want to do next when you come down for these meetings. And so I came up with a pitch for a movie that I sold in those first meetings. Amazing. And then sold the original script I wrote, and then Conspiracy of Tall Men had been optioned, and so I was hired to adapt that. And so within 6 months, I had this whole other career.
Takes so long for so many other people.
Yeah, and you know, I always say, like, you have to be good enough to get in the room.
Yeah.
You got to be good in the room, and you got to deliver when you leave the room. And if you can do those 3 things, right? The work stands for itself. It gets you in the meeting. And then, you know, you got to be good in the room.
Yep.
And then what you promise them, you have to deliver. And if you can do that, then you can start to build it.
It occurs to me, you know, TV today is so different from when we're about the same age, when we were growing up watching TV.
Yeah.
Note the 25th anniversary of The Sopranos going on television is this year, 2024, 25 years. 25 years since The West Wing came on. In a lot of ways, Fargo will stand, I think, alongside some of the best shows of our lifetime. But also, it is such a different moment for TV than it was then. And I wonder if that's been part of the success of the work that you've done, that that opportunity to distribute along different platforms or in different channels, or to do things that traditionally people in television, Aaron Sorkin, even David Chase on a premium cable channel, really couldn't do.
Yeah.
Is that part of what's gone on here?
Well, there was this stretch between when Fargo first came out, 2014, until about the pandemic, you know, in which you had so many players entering this making television phase. You went from 280 shows to 500 shows.
This is the movies is the new TV, or TV is the new movies phase of entertainment.
And so the only way that, say, an AMC, right, or a Starz or a MGM streamer, the only way that they could differentiate themselves is to make something different and better.
Yep.
So for artists, it became, well, I have a weird idea, right, or an interesting take on something.
Right.
And TV became this artistic medium in which you had a lot of experimentation, you had a lot of novelistic storytelling, things that you couldn't have done on commercial television back then.
Right.
And it became indulgent in a way. I mean, I certainly made a 4th season of Fargo that had 65, 70-minute episodes, and you know, it was a huge swing.
But you're
season.
liberated from the constraints of traditional television, and that has been a big help.
Yeah, I mean, Legion was a surrealist superhero story, right? And I couldn't have done that if there had been constraints on the business. The other thing, of course, was that people just started spending crazy amounts of money.
Crazy amounts.
And so then you could really experiment with it. And the The thing with FX is that we never have the money that anybody else has, so I have to make it look like it costs that while really making it cost something less.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And honestly, the streaming services expose your product, the thing you create, to so many more people and over a long tail.
Yes.
And that's a big help because at the end of the day, the audience is what you're focused on.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, now that FX is on Hulu, when we launch a season of FX on Hulu, you get the other 4 seasons being watched. You know,
Yeah.
it becomes this snowball.
Well, people get to go back and see the thing that they missed.
Right. Well, and what's fun about the show, I think, is you could watch it in any order, you know?
Right.
Yeah. I finally met Steve Buscemi at
we start with Buscemi, we end with Buscemi. Tell me about that.
I met him at the Tribeca Film Festival, and it turned out he was a big fan of the show, which I really was very happy to hear. And he said, you know, I was introduced to someone yesterday, and they said, oh, Steve was in Fargo, and the guy said, what season?
Oh.
And he was a very good sport about
Burn.
it. He was a very good
That is
sport
a
about
sick
it.
burn. That's
Yeah.
actually great. All right.
Yeah.
Hey, I appreciate you giving us time today. Thank
My
you. Noah
pleasure.
Hawley, give him a big hand. Thank you very much, man. Great. We'd love to have you join us in the studio. Visit our website at austinpbs.org/overheard to find invitations to interviews, Q&As with our audience and guests, and an archive of past episodes.
There are all these elements that go into a season of Fargo, like I said. And so this, obviously, we have a constitutional sheriff character. There's a lot of this sort of alt-right world, you know, this Tiger King America morality and et cetera. And so, you know, a lot of us are trying to understand what that world is actually like.
Support for Overheard with Evan Smith comes from Hilco Partners, a Texas government affairs consultancy, Claire and Carl Stewart, Christine and Philip Dial, and the Eller Group, specializing in crisis management, litigation, and public affairs communication. ellergroup.com.